"She's faking it," Carl sneered, as Emma clutched her stomach and dry heaved across my driveway. "You poisoned her fries, and now you're hiding behind your kid." His voice cracked through the dark like a whip, loud enough for the neighbors to open their blinds just in time to watch him jab his finger in my face and shout, "You did this, Daniel!" I hadn't even processed his words before the cancellation started. Clients I'd served for 10 years, gone overnight, my name smeared by whispers. But while Carl ran his mouth, I gathered records. Every receipt, every forged signature, every fake food safety certificate he used to steal my business. My daughter smelled the danger first. Now it's my turn to make Carl choke on the truth. My name is Daniel Morales, and I'm 45 years old. After my divorce, I built my catering business from scratch, showing up before dawn and leaving long after sunset. But I always guard Friday nights for my 10-year-old daughter, Lily. The diner's neon sign casts a warm glow across our usual booth while Lily draws smiley faces in ketchup. My brother-in-law, Carl Bennett, circles our family gatherings like a shark, his expensive watch flashing as he measures everyone's success against his own. I keep every receipt, every contract, and every transaction logged in triple copies. A habit from my army days that saved me more than once. These days, watching Carl's calculated smile at church, my jaw tightens with an old soldier's instinct for trouble. But let me start from the beginning. You know what Friday nights mean to a single dad? They're sacred. After pushing through 6 days of early mornings and late nights, juggling permits and purchase orders, Friday at Ray's Diner was my reward. Our reward. Just me and Lily, tucked into that worn, leather booth by the window, where the neon sign painted everything in soft purple and blue. That particular Friday started like any other. The bell chimed as we pushed through the glass door, and Mary, she'd been waiting tables there since I was probably Lily's age, waved us to our usual spot. The vinyl squeaked as we settled in, and Lily pulled out her math homework while we waited for our order. "How'd that science test go?" I asked, watching her arrange her pencils just so. Her face lit up. "Got an A! Mrs. Peterson said my volcano experiment was the best in class." "That's my girl." I couldn't help grinning. Remember when a good grade could make your whole week? Though I'm still finding baking soda in the kitchen. The burgers arrived with a steaming heap of Ray's famous fries. Hand-cut every morning, double-fried, and seasoned with some secret blend they'd never share. But instead of diving in like usual, Lily picked up one fry and held it to her nose. Her forehead wrinkled. "Daddy, something smells wrong." She set it down and pushed the plate toward the center of the table. Before I could ask what she meant, a familiar voice cut through the diner's clatter. "Well, if it isn't my favorite uncle." Emma, my 14-year-old niece, slid into our booth uninvited. Carl, my brother-in-law, stood behind her, adjusting his designer watch with that practiced casual gesture of his. "Daniel?" He nodded, as if we'd planned this little reunion. "Fancy running into you here." Emma's eyes locked onto Lily's untouched fries. "You're not eating these?" Without waiting for an answer, she pulled the plate closer and popped one into her mouth. "They're perfect." "You're such a baby sometimes, Lily." "Emma," I started, but Lily's face had already closed up tight. She stared down at her math homework, shoulders rigid. The diner's manager, new guy, couldn't have been there more than a month, rushed over like he'd been monitoring the situation. "So sorry about that batch," he said, though nobody had complained to him. "Kitchen was slammed, might have rushed them. Let me get you fresh ones, on the house." He whisked away Lily's burger too, despite my protests. When the fresh plate arrived, Lily just shook her head. "I'm not hungry anymore," she whispered. That sixth sense of hers, the one that kept her from drinking spoiled milk before I could smell it, the one that knew when storms were coming before the weather report, it was speaking to her. I settled the bill, nodded goodbye to Carl and Emma, who'd managed to finish every last wrong fry, and walked Lily home through the cooling night air. The stars were just starting to punch through the darkness, but my mind kept circling back to that first plate. Lily's instincts were usually spot on. At home, I tucked her into bed, smoothing her dark curls back from her forehead. "Love you, sweetheart," I said, and she gave me that smile that made everything worth it. "Love you too, Daddy." I tried to file the whole thing away under odd but over. Just another Friday night, with an unexpected twist. But at 12:43 a.m., my phone lit up the darkness. Carl's name flashed on the screen, along with a text that hit me like a shot of adrenaline. "Emma's sick. This is on you." The phone started buzzing in my hand. Carl calling, then again, and again. I didn't sleep after those calls. How could I? By 4 a.m., I was steering my truck through empty streets, streetlights clicking past like a countdown. You ever notice how everything feels more intense before sunrise? like the world's holding its breath, waiting to see what breaks first, the dawn or you. Carl's house blazed like a lighthouse of accusation, every exterior light burning. Even the garden spots were on, turning his prized hydrangeas into twisted shadows. I pulled into the driveway, and before I could kill the engine, he burst through his front door. "You!" He stormed across his lawn in flannel pajama pants and a golf shirt he must have thrown on in a hurry. "You poisoned my daughter." "Keep your voice down," I said, stepping out of the truck. "It's not even 5 a.m. I'll wake up the whole damn neighborhood if I want to." Carl jabbed his finger at me. "Those fries, you knew something was wrong. That's why Lily wouldn't eat them." Through the front window, I could see Emma stretched out on their leather couch, a blanket pulled up to her chin. Her face was the color of old paper, and something twisted in my gut. No matter what Carl was saying, that was still my niece in there. My phone buzzed. The diner manager. Kevin, I remembered now. "Mr. Morales? I've been here since 3, checking everything." His voice carried that mix of exhaustion and determination you get from someone trying to head off disaster. Our line cook confirmed the temperature logs, storage protocols. Everything was by the book. "I'll tell anyone who asks, there's no way those fries caused this." "Put him on speaker," Carl demanded, having moved close enough to hear Kevin's voice. "Let everyone hear his excuses." I switched to speaker just as Kevin said, "The health department can verify." "Convenient," Carl cut in. "Your little buddy covering for you. We'll see what the hospital says." He stormed off, leaving me standing there with Kevin still trying to help on the line. Porch lights were clicking on up and down the street. Faces appeared in windows, then bodies in doorways. Mrs. Peterson from 2 doors down, she'd hired me to cater her daughter's graduation last spring, stood arms crossed in her robe. The Hendersons, who'd recommended my services to their whole church group, whispered behind their hands. My phone buzzed again. Lily this time. "Daddy, are you okay?" Her voice was small, worried. "I heard you leave." "Everything's fine, sweetheart," I said, turning away from the gathering audience. "Just having a quick talk with Uncle Carl. Emma's not feeling well, but it'll all get sorted out. Go back to sleep, okay?" 3 hours later, I sat in our usual pew at First Baptist, trying to focus on Pastor Mike's sermon about forgiveness. Lily pressed against my side, her hand finding mine whenever another head turned our way. The whispers floated like poison gas. "Heard the whole kitchen's suspect, cutting corners in this economy." His own niece, can you imagine? After service, the usual handshakes were shorter, the smiles tighter. People who'd sworn by my catering suddenly remembered urgent appointments. Back home, I opened my laptop to check Monday's schedule. The email from Henderson Financial sat like a brick in my inbox. "Dear Mr. Morales, given recent events, we feel it prudent to review our standing contract for the quarterly staff luncheons. We'll be in touch once we've completed our assessment of alternative options. Regards, Thomas Henderson." I closed the laptop harder than I meant to. 10 years of perfect service. And one night, one plate of fries they hadn't even eaten, was enough to make them review options. "Daddy?" Lily stood in the doorway of my home office, still in her church dress. "Do people believe lies just because someone says them loud enough?" I waved her over, and she climbed into my lap like she used to when she was smaller. "Sometimes they do, sweetheart. But the truth has a way of being louder in the end. I promise." Her dark eyes studied my face, looking for the certainty I was trying to project. God, I hoped I was right. Monday hit like a hangover. I unlocked the office door at 6:30, same as always, and fired up the ancient coffee maker that had seen me through 1,000 early mornings. You know that quiet before the workday starts? Usually it steadied me. This time it felt like holding my breath. The first cancellation email dinged while I was still pouring my coffee. The second followed before I could set the pot down. By 7, my week was springing leaks faster than I could patch them. The Wilsons' anniversary party, gone. The law firm's monthly lunch service, pursuing other options. The real estate office's open house spread. Scheduling conflicts. Each one landed like a body blow, but I kept my hands steady, typing polite acknowledgments like nothing was wrong. Old habits die hard, I guess. My phone lit up around 9. Martha Chen. She'd been with me since I'd started the business, back when I was still cooking everything in my garage. "Daniel," her voice wavered. "I hate making this call." "I know, Martha." The coffee had gone cold in my mug. "What did he offer you?" A pause stretched between us. 15% below your rate, plus free appetizers for the first 3 months. She sighed. "Carl said he's just trying to maintain standards in the community after my poisoned fries." The words tasted bitter. "Martha, you know me. 10 years. Not one complaint. I do know you. That's why this is hard. Another pause. He had paperwork, Daniel. Health certificates, bank statements. Everything looks so professional. I'm sorry. After we hung up, I pulled up the community forum on my laptop. There it was. Carl Bennett, citizen concerned, sharing his thoughts about responsibility to our children and maintaining proper standards. Never mentioning me by name, of course, just letting everyone connect their own dots. The diner was quiet when I walked in at 2. Kevin, the manager, had dark circles under his eyes that probably matched mine. He spread the temperature logs across the counter like playing cards. Every reading, every oil change, every cleaning record for the past month. He tapped the paper. Hell, past 6 months if you need them. That fryer was running perfect Friday night. I took photos, then tucked the originals into my jacket. Thanks, Kevin. This helps. Wish it helped more. He wiped down the already clean counter. Your brother-in-law was in here yesterday, you know, talking real loud about food safety consulting or some bull. Driving back, I spotted Carl's chrome-trimmed truck outside Bella's coffee shop. Through the window, I could see him sitting with Bob Marshall and Jim Tucker, both longtime clients of mine. They turned their heads when I drove past, suddenly fascinated by their coffee cups. The notebook was Army issue, something I'd kept from my service days. Old habit, document everything, time, place, names. I wrote it all down in tight, clean rows. Carl's truck at Bella's 2:47 p.m. Marshall and Tucker present. Martha Chen's call, 9:12 a.m. The forum post timestamps, the cancellation emails. Back at the office, I spread the numbers out like battlefield intel. Payroll due in 10 days. Rent on the 1st. 3 wedding deposits I'd have to refund. The math was brutal. Maybe 6 weeks of runway if nothing else fell apart. The wall calendar hung like a countdown clock. I circled the 1st of next month in red, 30 days to stop the bleeding. Someone had left a business card on my windshield while I was inside. Carl Bennett Catering, printed in glossy raised letters. On the back, in his smug handwriting, it's not personal, just business. I added the card to my notebook, writing the time and date with the same steady hand I'd used to log mission details years ago. Same clarity of purpose, too. Back then, winning meant everyone coming home alive. Now it meant surviving long enough to prove what Carl was doing. The office felt too quiet as I locked up. Lily would be home from her friend's house soon, probably hungry. I couldn't let her see how deep this cut. Not yet. By Wednesday morning, my inbox looked like a digital ghost town. Each refresh brought another polite rejection, another regretful cancellation. I crafted responses that wouldn't burn bridges. I understand completely, and please keep us in mind for future events, though every keystroke felt like swallowing sand. You ever notice how failure has its own smell? Like old coffee and printer ink, with a hint of desperation. I'd been marinating in it since dawn, juggling unpaid invoices against the few remaining receivables. The numbers didn't just refuse to add up. They seemed to mock me with each new calculation. I tried calling Carl twice that morning. First at 8, then again at 10. Both times, straight to voicemail. His message was all warmth and welcome. Carl Bennett Catering, where every event is special, made my teeth ache just hearing it. Around noon, Patricia from the country club, one of my steadiest clients, finally took my call. "Oh, Daniel," she said, her voice dripping with that special kind of pity that makes your spine stiffen. "I wished you'd told us about the issues." "What issues, Patricia?" "Well, Carl mentioned the unsafe practices, the expired ingredients." She lowered her voice like she was sharing state secrets. "He said that poor girl at the diner wasn't the first incident." My pen snapped in my hand. Blue ink spread across the invoice I'd been reviewing like blood in water. "That's a lie, Patricia. You know me. 5 years, I've handled every event." "I'm sorry, Daniel. We have to think of liability." After midnight, with Lily sleeping down the hall, I spread everything across the kitchen table. Bank statements, contracts, client lists. My whole life measured in columns and rows. The math was brutal. 3 weeks until payroll would bounce. Maybe 4 until the equipment loans defaulted. I pressed my palms against my eyes until colors burst behind them. Down the hall, Lily's nightlight cast a soft glow under her door. My girl, who trusted me to keep our world steady, who believed her dad could fix anything. The notebook sat open beside me, each entry a fresh wound. I started underlining names. Every client Carl had visited, highlighting the ones who might still throw me a lifeline if I cut deep enough on price. Called in every favor I'd banked over the years. Thursday morning found me at First State Bank, swallowing my pride to ask about a bridge loan. Just enough to weather the storm until I could rebuild. The loan officer, Dave Matthews, who'd handled my original business loan, was in a meeting. His assistant couldn't say when he'd be free. I was heading for the door when I saw Carl stride in, folder tucked under his arm like a winner's trophy. That same plastic smile he wore at family gatherings. He nodded to the receptionist like they were old friends, then disappeared into Dave's office without waiting. Something cold settled in my gut as I stepped back into the shadows by the potted ferns. Carl had been a constant presence at the bank lately. I'd heard whispers about expansion plans, new contracts, but this felt different, more purposeful. 10 minutes later, he emerged with Dave, both of them laughing like they'd just shared the world's best joke. Dave clapped Carl on the shoulder. "We'll get those papers processed right away, Mr. Bennett. Shouldn't take more than a day or two." I waited until Carl's truck pulled away before leaving. In my car, I pulled out the notebook, my growing record of times, places, meetings. Added today's entry with steady hands. Carl Bennett, First State Bank, 10:45 a.m. Meeting with D. Matthews, unknown papers. The time for playing defense was over. Tomorrow, I'd start tracking Carl's movements, learn his patterns, find out exactly what kind of game he was playing. I touched the small army insignia embossed on the notebook's cover. Some battles you win with bullets. Others, those you win with patience and intelligence. Right now, I needed both. Friday morning, I sat in my office staring at a blank document titled Business for Sale Draft. My fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly. Established catering business, strong client base. I typed, then deleted it. Lie. Turnkey operation with growth potential. Delete. Another lie. Owner retiring to pursue. The backspace key got a workout on that one too. You ever try to write your own business obituary? It's like digging your own grave with a spoon. Slow, painful, and it makes you question every choice that led you there. Phone rang, startling me enough that my knee banged the desk. The caller ID showed a number I hadn't seen in years. Mark Alvarez. "Danny boy." His voice came through clear and steady, just like in the sandbox. "Why do you sound like someone standing on your throat?" I tried to laugh it off. "Just business stuff, Mark." "Nothing. Cut the crap. I'm in town visiting my sister. What's your address?" Before I could protest, he hung up. That was Mark. Direct fire, no warning shots. By dinner time, my kitchen table looked like a war room. Mark had shown up with a cardboard carrier of black coffee, and that same intense focus I remembered from our convoy days. He'd barely said hello before pulling up a chair and grabbing my notebook. "Walk me through it," he said, flipping pages. "Start with the diner night." I laid it out while he made notes in precise block letters. His eyebrows drew together when I mentioned Carl's bank visits. "Here," he said, pointing to my scattered entries. "See the pattern? Every Tuesday and Thursday, same time block. That's not random, brother. That's operational tempo." The military precision in his voice steadied something in me. "What are you thinking?" "I'm thinking we treat this like a proper investigation." He pulled out a fresh notepad. Chain of custody. Everything documented, cross-referenced, time-stamped. "You said you keep good records?" For the next hour, I pulled files while Mark created a labeling system. Bank statements going back 6 months. Vendor contracts. Email threads with clients who jumped ship. Each document went into a fresh folder with a date range and category code. "Basic field manual stuff," Mark said, writing in his precise hand. "You secure the perimeter first, then you sweep for intel." Lily poked her head in, around 8, curious about the paper fortress we'd built. I drew her aside, knelt to her level. "Hey, sweetheart, Uncle Mark's helping me with some work stuff. Think you can keep up with school and our Friday nights while I handle this?" She nodded, serious as a judge. "Promise. That's my girl." I kissed her forehead and sent her off to finish homework. Back at the table, Mark had sketched out a 3-week timeline on printer paper, broken into daily objectives. "First priority," he said, tapping the page. "We verify every document with your name on it. Every signature, every initial, every approval. Looking for forgeries? Looking for anything hinky. If Carl's working angles at the bank, chances are he needed your name somewhere along the line." The thought sent ice through my gut, but it was better than the helpless anger I'd been choking on. This was action. This was something I could grip. "Remember what the captain used to say?" Mark asked, shuffling papers into precise stacks. "We work the paper. The paper talks," I finished. It felt good, like putting on old boots that still fit. Mark nodded, checking his watch. "Bank opens at 9 tomorrow. I'll ride shotgun while you make a withdrawal request. See who sweats when we start asking questions. I set my phone alarm for 0700 while Mark kept organizing. Thay Chai's kitchen light caught his military posture, the familiar way he squared corners on the folders. For the first time in weeks, I felt that pilot light of dignity flickering back to life. Have you ever watched someone forge your life with a cheap printer and cheaper ink? It's like seeing your reflection in a carnival mirror. Everything's there, but nothing's right. The bank lobby hadn't changed since my first business loan. Same faux marble, same potted plants thirsting for water, same clock ticking away borrowed time. Mark sat in one of those low chairs meant to make you feel small, pretending to read market reports while I approached the desk. "Good morning," I said to the loan officer, Sandra Mitchell, according to her nameplate. "I need copies of any applications or documents linked to my business tax ID from the past 3 months." She typed with mechanical efficiency. "Of course, Mr. Morales. May I ask the reason?" "Just reviewing my files." The lie felt clumsy in my mouth, but Mark had coached me. "Keep it vague. Keep it professional." 10 minutes later, Sandra returned with a manila folder that made my throat go dry. There, on top, was my signature. Except it wasn't. The strokes were too perfect, too uniform. I'd never used that font in my life. Mark materialized beside me, phone in hand. "Mind if I document these for his records?" He didn't wait for an answer. Just started shooting close-ups of margins and dates while I flipped through pages that belonged to someone else's nightmare. "Hold up," Mark murmured, his finger landing on a courier receipt. The signature at the bottom belonged to Carl Bennett, dated 2 weeks before Emma's Fry's incident. My stomach clenched like I'd swallowed ice. Mark pulled out a folder of his own. Contracts I'd signed last year, properly notarized and filed. He laid them side by side with the bank's copies. The difference was obvious now. Real signatures dance, forgeries march. Sandra's face went professionally blank. "I'll need to escalate this to compliance." The compliance manager arrived wearing a charcoal suit and a grave expression. He reviewed both sets of documents, made several calls, and finally slid a formal notice across the desk. "Given the discrepancies," he said, "your account is under mandatory review. You have 30 days to disprove fraudulent activity before we're required to seize assets for investigation." 30 days. The paper trembled slightly in my hand. Not from fear, but from something harder and colder. I thought of Lily waiting at home, trusting her dad to keep the world steady. I stepped into the hallway and called her. "Hey, sweetheart. Listen, I've got to work late tonight. How about we do fries at home this Friday instead of the diner? Can I help cook them?" Her voice carried none of the weight crushing my chest. "You're the chef in charge." I managed to keep the tremor out of my voice. "Love you, kiddo. Love you too, Daddy." I hung up and stared at the notice. Proof sat in my hands. Carl's signature, forged documents, a paper trail leading straight to betrayal. But proof needs time to matter. And time was now, measured in grains of sand. Mark led us to a coffee shop across the street. He pulled out a legal pad and started writing in that precise military hand. He underlined that last word twice. "Why now?" he asked. Why risk forgery when his business was doing fine? I watched steam rise from my untouched coffee, thinking about Carl's smirk at the diner, about Emma eating those fries, about patterns hidden in plain sight. You know what's worse than discovering your brother-in-law forged your signature? Having to explain it to a tired police sergeant while he checks his watch every 30 seconds. "Let me get this straight," Sergeant Peterson said, shuffling the papers I'd brought. "You're saying Mr. Bennett used these documents to secure loans under your business name?" "That's exactly what I'm saying." I pointed to the courier receipt. His signature, right there. 2 weeks before he started spreading rumors about my business. Mark sat beside me, quiet but alert, the way he used to get during mission briefings. He'd spent the morning building a timeline on his laptop, every meeting, every canceled contract, every coincidence that wasn't coincidental at all. The sergeant's pen scratched across his notepad. "And you've notified the bank?" "Copies went to their fraud department an hour ago." I didn't mention the 30-day countdown. Didn't have to. It was stamped across every thought like a postmark. "We'll investigate," Peterson said, but his tone suggested I shouldn't hold my breath. Financial cases take time. Time. Funny how that word keeps showing up when you're running out of it. The knock came just as Mark and I were reviewing the chronology back at my office. 3 sharp raps that echoed like judge's gavel. "Daniel Morales?" The process server looked bored, like he delivered life-changing papers every hour. Maybe he did. "You've been served." The complaint was thick. 20 pages of legal language that boiled down to one thing. Carl was suing me. Through his lawyer cousin, no less. The same cousin who'd helped draft half the contracts Carl had used to poach my clients. I started reading and almost laughed. According to these papers, I was the one who'd misappropriated funds. I was the one who'd breached agreements. They'd taken every single thing Carl had done and painted it in reverse. "They're not even trying to be creative," Mark said, reading over my shoulder. "Look at these court dates." My stomach dropped. Every hearing, every deadline, every required appearance fell within the same 30 days the bank had given me. Carl's cousin hadn't picked those dates by accident. "They want you tired, not truthful," Mark said, his voice hard with recognition. "Wear you down, drain your resources, force a settlement." I grabbed my phone and called Ray's diner. "Hey Tom, it's Daniel Morales. Remember those fryer logs from the night Emma got sick? I need you to email me copies. Everything you've got." "Sure thing," Tom said. "Still got 'em filed. You okay? Heard about some lawsuit." News travels fast in small towns. By evening, local Facebook groups were lighting up. The comments had shifted from "I heard" to "Well, now we know." People who'd known me for years were sharing the lawsuit story with sad emojis and "so disappointed" posts. I stood in my office, surrounded by shelves of equipment I might have to sell. Machines I'd maintained myself. Tools I'd collected over years of showing up early and leaving late. Each piece had a story, a purpose, a place in the life I'd built. "Daddy?" Lily stood in the doorway, her backpack still on. "Kelly at school said her mom says bad guys always win because they cheat. Is that true?" I opened my mouth to tell her no, to promise justice would prevail, to spin some comforting story about good triumphing over evil, but I couldn't lie to her. Not even to make her feel better. Instead, I walked to the whiteboard where I usually tracked weekly jobs, uncapped a marker, wrote 5 words that felt like a battle plan. "Prove what cannot be spun." "What does that mean?" Lily asked. "It means we gather facts," I said, "until the truth is louder than the lies." I stared at the whiteboard at 4 a.m., the "prove what cannot be spun" message taunting me in harsh fluorescent light. You know those moments when giving up feels like the only sane option? Yeah, I was there. The lawsuit papers sat heavy on my desk, each page screaming about how I'd supposedly wronged Carl while he played the victim. My coffee had gone cold, untouched. Mark dozed in the corner chair, his laptop still open to spreadsheets we'd been combing through until midnight. The whole thing felt impossible, like trying to catch smoke with bare hands. Then I remembered Lily's face at Ray's that night, the way her nose wrinkled, how she just knew something wasn't right. Kids have that gift, don't they? Before life teaches them to doubt their instincts. She hadn't been afraid. She'd recognized a warning signal. "That's it," I muttered, the idea hitting me like a splash of cold water. Mark stirred. "What's it?" "Smell. Signs. Signals." I started pacing. "We've been so focused on the forgeries and the client poaching we missed the obvious." He sat up straighter, military training kicking in. "Walk me through it. Carl's been underbidding me on every contract, right? But catering margins are razor thin already. The numbers don't work unless he's cutting corners somewhere." Mark was fully awake now, fingers flying across his keyboard. "And if Emma got sick from those fries, maybe it wasn't the first time someone got sick from food around Carl. You ever notice how solving puzzles is like dominoes? One piece tips, and suddenly you see the whole pattern." Mark pulled up Carl's catering website, the one full of glossy photos and fancy menus. But we weren't looking at the pictures. We were hunting for dates, prices, vendor lists. "Got it," Mark said. "Public Health Department requires caterers to list their suppliers. Carl's got them right here, trying to look transparent." I leaned in, scanning invoice dates against his advertised specials. "Look at this pattern. Every 3rd week, he runs these massive discounts, way below market. Same weeks these suppliers mark down near expired inventory." Mark's voice had that tight focus I remembered from our service days. "But the volumes don't match." He pulled up municipal waste records. Public information, if you know where to look. "See these disposal logs? For a catering operation his size, serving the quantities he claims, the garbage output's too low." I felt my pulse quicken. He's not throwing the expired stuff away. We spent the next 3 hours building the case. Found review posts mentioning strange tastes that lined up perfectly with his discount weeks. Dug up photos from social media where eagle-eyed guests had accidentally captured expired labels in the background. One former employee had even posted about quitting over safety concerns, but deleted it fast. Not fast enough for Google's cache, though. By sunrise, we had a dossier that told the real story. Carl wasn't just underbidding me, he was serving food that should have been in a dumpster. The numbers proved it. The dates proved it. The pattern proved it. I looked at the calendar where I'd circled the bank's deadline in red. 30 days had seemed impossible. Now it felt like ammunition. "We filing this with your lawyer?" Mark asked, watching me stare at the circle. I glanced at Lily's backpack hanging by the door, remembering her instinct about those fries. "Some warnings you have to heed." "No," I said, reaching for my phone. "Health department first. This stopped being about lawsuits the minute we found out he's gambling with people's safety." Mark nodded, already pulling up the department's contact information. "Hit him where he can't spin it." I picked up the receiver, the weight of it somehow lighter than before. Sometimes the best defense isn't a legal counterattack. It's simply showing the truth in such clear light that no amount of lawyer speak can shadow it. Ever notice how the weight of papers changes when they're loaded with truth? The 3 binders Mark and I carried into the health department felt heavier than their actual mass, like they were pulling the future along with them. The clerk at the counter looked up, probably not used to seeing anyone arrive right at opening with that much documentation. "Can I help you?" "We need to file a formal complaint," I said, setting down the first binder, "regarding food safety violations at Bennett Catering Services." She reached for a standard form, but Mark stepped in smoothly. "Ma'am, this is a comprehensive report with supporting evidence. It might need your supervisor's attention." I'd forgotten how Mark could make even simple statements sound like they came with stars on the shoulder. Military bearing never really leaves you, I guess. The clerk studied him for a moment, then picked up her phone. While we waited, I thought about those Friday nights at Ray's, the warm glow of the neon, Lily's smile across the booth. Amazing how one bad plate of fries had started all this. But maybe that's how truth works sometimes. One small thing tips over and reveals all the rot hiding underneath. The supervisor appeared, a sharp-eyed woman who introduced herself as Ms. Chen. She listened to our outline without interruption, only nodding when we mentioned the pattern of expired inventory and suspicious disposal logs. "And you have documentation for all of this?" she asked. Mark opened the first binder to our executive summary. "Everything's indexed, dated, and cross-referenced, including photographic evidence and witness statements." I pulled out the Ray's Diner logs separately. "These are the original Fryer records from the incident that Mr. Bennett used to start his accusations. The restaurant manager will verify their authenticity. You know that moment when you can see someone shift from routine bureaucracy to genuine interest?" Ms. Chen had it right then. She called in another staff member, and they spent 20 minutes reviewing our filing system. "This is unusually thorough," she said finally. "We'll need to schedule an immediate site inspection." Back at the office, Mark helped me package the same materials for the bank, adding a detailed cover letter that connected Carl's forged signatures to the food safety violations. "See how we're tying it together?" he said. "Shows a pattern of deliberate deception, not just isolated incidents." I hit send on the email to the bank's compliance manager, then sat back, feeling drained but lighter, somehow, like setting down a heavy pack after a long march. My phone buzzed. A text from Carl. "Back off now, or there will be costs you can't afford." Mark actually laughed when I showed him. "Perfect," he said, printing it out. "Let's add intimidation to the file." The stapler's snap felt like punctuation. A reply came from the bank within the hour. "Receipt confirmed. Document forensics team assigned. Will process with priority given." Timeline. I called Lily next, trying to keep my voice casual. "Hey, sweetheart. Think we'll do dinner at home again this Friday? Maybe watch that new space movie after homework? The one with the robots?" She sounded excited, and I felt that familiar warmth in my chest. Some things matter more than pride or payback. 3 days later, I parked across from Carl's commercial kitchen. The morning air had that crisp edge that makes everything seem clearer somehow. Mark sat beside me, thermos in hand, as steady as he'd been in the sandbox all those years ago. Right on schedule, 3 unmarked cars pulled up. Health inspectors stepped out, carrying tablets and wearing expressions that meant business. They disappeared inside Carl's building, and I could almost hear the stopwatches starting. A few early workers passed by, some doing double takes at Carl's place. Word would spread fast in a town this size. But for once I wasn't worried about the whispers. "Remember what you told me about evidence trails in the Army?" I asked Mark. He nodded. "Follow the paper. Follow the truth." "Yeah." I watched another inspector arrive with what looked like sampling equipment. "Well, we just lit up the trail with floodlights. 2 hours and 17 minutes. That's how long the inspection team stayed inside Carl's kitchen. I know because I checked my watch when the first inspector emerged, carrying a sealed cooler like it held evidence from a crime scene. In a way, I suppose it did. Look at their faces. Mark muttered, nodding toward the group of inspectors huddled around their clipboards. Even from across the street, their expressions told the story. They'd found exactly what we'd documented. A manager in a navy blazer approached Carl's front door, paperwork in hand. The red notice went up like a final verdict. Temporarily closed pending health department review. Simple words that carried the weight of every corner Carl had cut, every safety regulation he'd ignored. Carl's staff gathered on the curb, phones out, probably texting family about sudden unemployment. A few pedestrians slowed their morning commute to Rubberneck, and I watched the ripple effect in real time. One woman whispered to another, who immediately pulled out her phone. Within minutes, small clusters formed on the sidewalk, all sharing the same news. "Want to drive by the church?" Mark asked, knowing how our town worked. Information traveled fast, but judgment traveled faster. Sure enough, the community bulletin board outside First Baptist had already been updated. Where there used to be an advertisement for Carl's catering service, now there was just blank space. Funny how quickly people can distance themselves when the tide turns. Back at my office, I logged into my email and drafted an update to the bank's compliance team. Attached the closure notice, drew clear lines between Carl's food safety violations and the forged documents bearing my signature. "Pattern of deliberate misconduct continues to emerge," I wrote, keeping it professional despite the satisfaction humming in my chest. My phone buzzed. Lily calling during recess. "Dad, Jenny at school said they closed down Uncle Carl's kitchen. Is it because of the fries that night?" I leaned back in my chair, choosing my words carefully. "Sort of, honey. Remember how you knew something wasn't right just by smelling it? Well, sometimes it takes time for other people to see what one person notices first. So I was right to trust my nose? You were right to trust yourself," I said, feeling a surge of pride. That's always the best place to start. The preliminary report hit my inbox just after lunch. Reading it felt like watching dominoes fall. Every point we documented lined up with their findings. Multiple instances of expired stock, inadequate temperature monitoring, incomplete disposal records. The clinical language couldn't hide the severity. Carl hadn't just cut corners. He'd bulldozed right through them. A new email notification popped up. Ray from the diner. "Daniel, just wanted to say thanks for handling everything the right way that night. When everyone else was jumping to conclusions, you stuck to the facts. Means a lot in this business. Stop by sometime. Coffee's on me. Ray." I printed that one out. "Some words you want to keep." Mark came back from lunch, tossed me a sandwich. "Streets are buzzing," he said, dropping into the chair across from my desk. 3 people stopped me to ask if I'd heard about Carl's place. News travels fast when it's juicy enough. "Yeah." I unwrapped the sandwich but didn't take a bite. "Any sign of his lawyer cousin?" "Not yet, but you know there's more coming. Guys like Carl don't go down without throwing everything they've got left." I walked home that evening, taking the long way through town. The sky seemed bigger somehow, like a weight had lifted not just from my shoulders, but from the air itself. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't done yet. Carl had played his food safety card and lost, but there were other shoes waiting to drop. Legal papers and bank notices that could still turn this whole thing sideways. But this time, I knew what was coming. Whatever landed next would be made of paper and ink. And thanks to Mark's military precision with our files, we had plenty of both ourselves. The bank's conference room felt smaller than I remembered, all polished wood and morning light. Mark sat beside me, our evidence folder thick between us. Across the table, Ms. Chen, the compliance officer, arranged 3 stacks of papers with careful precision. You know that moment when you can feel the tide turning? When justice isn't just a hope anymore, but something solid you can actually touch? That's what happened next. "Mr. Morales," Ms. Chen began, sliding the first stack toward us. "Our forensics team has completed the analysis of the loan documentation. Would you like to review their findings?" I nodded, though my throat had gone dry. Mark leaned in, his military training showing in how he scanned each page methodically. "The signatures on these applications," Ms. Chen continued, "were digitally inserted using software registered to a device belonging to Carl Bennett. We have timestamps, IP addresses, and the original file metadata." My hands didn't shake as I turned pages. Maybe because I'd known this truth all along, or maybe because anger had finally burned away the fear. Every detail was there in black and white. Dates, times, digital fingerprints that led straight to Carl's computer. "The bank takes fraud very seriously, Mr. Morales." Ms. Chen's voice carried the weight of institution behind it. "In cases like this, liability attaches to the originator of the fraudulent documents, not the victim of identity theft. "And the seizure proceedings?" Mark asked, ever practical. Immediately halted. She made a note in her folder. "Mr. Bennett's accounts have been flagged for referral to our fraud department. They'll handle it from here." The leather chair creaked as I sat back. Memories of sleepless nights and endless worry seemed to pool around my feet like old rainwater finally draining away. I called my attorney from the bank's lobby. By the time we reached my office, she'd already filed the forensics report with the court. Mark sprawled in his usual chair, boots crossed at the ankle, looking like a man who'd just finished a long march. "Incoming," he said, nodding at my computer screen. A new email had popped up. From Carl's lawyer cousin. The subject line read, "Notice of withdrawal." The message was brief, professional, bloodless. "In light of new information, we are withdrawing our complaint against Daniel Morales. Legal language for we got caught." I stepped outside onto Main Street, needing air and space. The sidewalks were busy with the usual morning traffic. But something was different. The whispers had stopped. No sidelong glances, no hushed conversations that died when I walked past. Just the normal sounds of a small town going about its business. My phone buzzed with a text from Lily. "How did the bank meeting go, Dad?" I typed back, "The worst is over, sweetheart. We won." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Finally, a single emoji popped up, a red ribbon. Like the kind you cut at grand openings. My daughter, always seeing straight to the heart of things. That evening, after everyone had gone home, I sat at my desk with a fresh legal pad. The shop felt different in the quiet, not empty, but full of possibility. I started writing, "Quality guarantee" at the top, then listed every standard and practice that had built my reputation before Carl tried to tear it down. Transparent pricing, no hidden fees, quality assurance checklist for every job, money-back guarantee if we didn't meet expectations. Everything I'd always done, but now formalized in writing. I opened my client database and started a new folder, Re-onboarding Strategy. Each name represented trust that needed rebuilding, but I had something now that Carl never did. Proof that doing things right mattered more than doing them cheap. The grand reopening next week poster took 3 drafts before I got the wording right. Simple, professional, nothing flashy, just a promise to be here, doing honest work at fair prices. When I taped it to the front window, my reflection looked back at me. Tired, but standing straight. That night, for the first time in weeks, sleep came easy. I dreamed of scissors, not the sharp kind that hurt, but the ceremonial ones used to cut ribbons. In the dream, each snip sliced away a piece of fear, until there was nothing left but clear path ahead. Monday morning, I sat at my desk with a stack of crisp letterhead paper and started writing. Not form letters, each one personal, handwritten. You know how sometimes the old ways still work best? This was one of those times. "I wanted to share some information that may interest you," I wrote, keeping my tone professional but direct. Into each envelope went copies of the bank's forensics report and the health department's findings. No commentary needed. The documents told their own story of forged signatures and expired food. Mark dropped by with coffee as I sealed the last envelope. "Good to see you working the early shift again," he said, settling into what had become his chair over these past weeks. "Getting back to my old habits," I replied, tapping the stack of letters. "Figure people deserve to know the whole story, not just pieces." The phone rang. My attorney, calling with news that hit like a hammerstroke. Carl's operating license had been permanently revoked. The final lab results had come back worse than initial testing suggested. She emailed me a copy of the local paper's notice section. There it was in black and white. Notice of asset liquidation, Bennett Catering Services. I thought I'd feel satisfaction seeing Carl's downfall in print. Instead, I just felt tired, like coming home after a long deployment, bone-weary but knowing you'd done what needed doing. "You planning something for the reopening?" Mark asked, nodding at the fresh sign leaning against my office wall. "Just something small," I said. "No speeches, no big show, but I want it done right." The morning of the ceremony dawned clear and cool. I'd chosen 9 a.m., early enough to catch the breakfast crowd heading to work, late enough for the school bus to drop Lily off first. She appeared in her favorite blue dress, the one she wore for special occasions, walking carefully so she wouldn't scuff her shoes. Mark stood a few steps back, at parade rest without seeming to think about it. Some habits stick with you, especially the good ones. A small crowd had gathered, mostly locals heading to the coffee shop next door, plus a few familiar faces from my client list. The new sign felt solid in my hands as I lifted it into place. Morales Services stood out in clean letters against fresh paint. Simple, direct, honest, everything I'd built my reputation on before, and would build it on again. I turned to face the crowd but kept my words brief. I want to thank two people, I said, my voice steady. My daughter Lily, who trusted her instincts when it mattered most, and my friend Mark Alvarez, who showed up when things looked darkest and helped find a path through. Lily stepped forward, those oversized scissors looking almost comical in her small hands. But her grip was sure, her chin high. Looking at her, I remembered that first night at Ray's diner, how she'd trusted her nose and pushed that plate away. Such a small thing, but it had started everything. Something settled in my chest then, like a picture frame finally hanging straight after being crooked so long. Pride, maybe. Not the showy kind that comes before a fall, but the quiet sort that grows from doing things right and standing your ground. The crowd seemed to sense the moment didn't need more words. They watched as Lily positioned the scissors against the red ribbon. I nodded to her, heard that clean snap of metal through fabric, and felt my name, our name, slide back into its proper place in the world. As the ribbon fluttered down, I leaned close to Lily's ear and whispered the only truth that really mattered. Trust your instincts, they never lie.